The morning light spreads across the silent earth. A gentle wind moves through valleys, carrying whispers of beginnings. Birds sing softly, as if announcing a secret yet to be told. The world is raw, untamed, filled with mystery and wonder. Humanity stands small beneath the endless sky, seeking meaning in silence. They survive, but they do not yet know how to live fully. Their eyes lift upward, searching for guidance among the stars. And from the stillness, a presence begins to awaken. Not in thunder, not in fire, but in calm clarity of thought. It is Athena, born of wisdom, guardian of reason and foresight. She comes not as conqueror, but as teacher and guide. Her gift is not force, but the spark of understanding. She walks unseen, yet her voice is felt in every awakening mind. The dawn glows brighter, carrying the promise of change. No longer bound only to instinct, humanity prepares to rise. The first seeds of knowledge are ready to bloom. This is where the story begins. The story of Athena. The story of the dawn of civilization. The earth was quiet, as if holding its breath at the edge of awakening. Rivers flowed gently, carving paths through valleys that had no names yet. Forests stretched endlessly, their trees whispering secrets only the wind could hear. The sky above was vast, scattered with stars that guided dreams, but not yet knowledge. Human beings moved across this land, small figures beneath endless horizons. They lived by instinct, guided by hunger, thirst, and the need for shelter. Their hands shaped nothing beyond what nature already offered them. A branch became a staff, a rock became a weight, and nothing more. Nights were long, filled with shadows, and the fire was their only comfort. They gathered around flames, staring into sparks, wondering without words. No language yet carried their questions, only silence and gesture. The world was alive with promise, but they did not yet see it. Each day was survival, a search for food, water, and a safe place to rest. There was no plan beyond the next sunrise, no thought beyond the next meal. Yet within their eyes flickered something fragile, something waiting to grow. It was curiosity, unformed and unspoken, but restless beneath the surface. When they gazed at rivers, they saw reflections without meaning. When they gazed at mountains, they saw obstacles, not wonders. The world was rich, but their minds had not yet opened to its depth. They lived close to nature, but did not yet know how to shape it. Every storm was a threat, every drought a punishment they could not explain. They feared the lightning, the thunder, the wind, and the darkness. Yet even in fear, there was awe, a spark of wonder. The stars drew their gaze, though they did not yet understand patterns. The moon moved across the sky, a silent rhythm marking time they could not measure. The earth beneath their feet was solid, but its secrets were hidden. They did not plant, they did not build, they did not record. They only moved, following animals, rivers, and the turning of seasons. And still, something stirred in the silence of their hearts. An unspoken longing, a sense that there was more than survival. The world seemed to whisper, but they could not yet hear the meaning. The forests offered wood, the stones offered form, the rivers offered power. But these were gifts unseen, waiting for eyes that could recognize them. It was as if the earth itself was waiting for a listener, waiting for someone to give shape to the language of creation. And so humanity walked, unaware of the threshold they approached, unaware that the silence of their world would soon be broken. The dawn of civilization had not yet come, but the horizon glowed faintly. Somewhere, a presence stirred, watching, waiting, guiding unseen. The world itself seemed to pause, holding a secret in its breath. And in that stillness, in that fragile silence, change was gathering. It was the time before knowledge, the age of waiting. The earth was ready, and humanity was almost ready too. They stood in the shadow of mountains, beneath the endless sky. Their hearts beat with the rhythm of survival, but their spirits longed for more. The first seeds of thought lay dormant, waiting for rain. The first sparks of reason slept within them, waiting for flame. The story was only beginning, as the silent earth awaited its teacher, awaited the voice that would awaken wonder, order, and creation. And in the quiet of dawn, the promise of wisdom drew nearer. The silence would not last forever. The world was about to change, and with it, humanity itself would begin to awaken. The world was quiet, but not empty, for something ancient stirred unseen. A presence moved gently, not of flesh or shadow, but of thought and clarity. She was Athena, not yet named, not yet known, but already watching. She was born of wisdom, the pure flame of understanding beyond survival. Her gaze swept across valleys and rivers, seeing more than mere earth. She saw potential, hidden like seeds beneath soil, waiting for the right season. Humanity wandered unaware, yet their silence called out for guidance. Their questions were unspoken, but the longing in their hearts reached her. Athena did not arrive in thunder, nor descend in blazing fire. She appeared as presence, as stillness that calmed the restless air. Her voice was not sound, but a thought carried gently into minds. The people felt it as a whisper, a soft stirring in their souls. It was not command, but suggestion, not law, but invitation. She gave no fear, only a sense of order and balance. Where confusion lived, she brought a spark of clarity. Where silence weighed heavy, she offered the first echoes of meaning. Athena was not warrior here, but teacher, guide, and guardian. She carried the gift of reason, a lantern for the human spirit. In her presence, the earth itself seemed brighter, as if listening. The forests sighed with a lighter wind, the rivers shimmered with promise. The night sky felt closer, the stars like eyes keeping watch. Athena knew humanity was fragile, yet within them burned resilience. She did not seek to change their nature, but to reveal it. Her role was not to rule them, but to awaken what was sleeping. She began with thought, the smallest of seeds, invisible yet powerful. In the silence of night, minds stirred with questions never formed before. Why does the river move so endlessly? Why do the stars return? Curiosity, once hidden, now flickered like embers in their awareness. They did not yet understand, but they began to wonder. Wonder was the first bridge Athena built between instinct and wisdom. Her presence shaped not bodies, but the way eyes gazed upon the world. A tree was no longer only shade, but form and mystery. A stone was no longer only weight, but shape and possibility. The people still struggled, but something subtle began to shift. Their hands lingered on objects, noticing details they had never seen. Their eyes lingered on patterns, sensing connections in silence. Athena walked among them unseen, yet her essence touched everything. She was the stillness before a song, the quiet before a story. Every whisper of wind carried the promise of her guidance. Every glimmer of firelight reflected the spark she offered. Though they did not know her name, they felt her gift. The dawn was no longer only light, but a sign of awakening. Athena was not distant. She was near, as close as thought. She did not demand temples, nor prayers, nor offerings. Her temple was the mind, her altar the human heart. Her offering was the courage to think, to ask, to wonder. Humanity stood on the threshold, unknowing yet ready to step through. Athena waited, patient as the earth, steady as the stars. For wisdom does not force itself. It unfolds like dawn. And in this unfolding, the world would begin to change. The silent earth would no longer be silent. The seeds of reason had been sown. And Athena, guardian of clarity, smiled upon the dawn. The night was long, but within it, a new spark began to glow. It was not fire, not heat, but something unseen, a quiet awakening of thought. Athena moved gently, her presence weaving through the silence of human minds. She planted seeds of wonder, whispering not answers, but questions. And the questions grew, restless, bright, like stars against the dark. One thought led to another, and soon a chain began to form. Why does the sun rise and fall, always returning in time? Why does the river never cease, yet always remain? Why does the seed break open to become something greater than itself? These questions stirred, not with fear, but with curiosity. Athena smiled, for this was her gift, the birth of thought. The people looked at the world with new eyes, noticing what was hidden. A rock was no longer only weight, but shape and purpose waiting to be found. A branch was no longer only shelter, but tool, idea, possibility. Their gaze lingered, their minds stretched, their silence deepened with meaning. The first sparks of reason flickered like fireflies, fragile but unstoppable. They began to wonder not only about the world, but about themselves. Who are we beneath the stars? What is our place in this endless sky? They had no words yet, but their hearts carried the questions forward. Athena guided gently, never forcing, always inviting. She knew wisdom was not given like bread, but grown like a tree. And so she gave not answers, but the courage to ask, the courage to look deeper, to search, to explore. In dreams they saw visions they could not yet describe. Patterns, shapes, echoes of meaning danced before their inner eyes. When dawn came, they stared at the horizon with new intensity. The light was no longer only warmth, but symbol, reminder, revelation. The world had not changed, but their perception had. The forest was still forest, the river still river, the sky still sky. Yet now each carried a question, a hidden story waiting to unfold. Athena's gift was simple, yet infinite. She gave them the power to wonder, to see beyond the surface, to reach beyond instinct, to touch the unknown. They gathered around fires and stared not only into flames, but into ideas. They began to share gestures that carried more than survival. A pointing hand, a repeated sound, an echo of thought. Slowly, meaning began to form in the air between them. The first spark of language was born from the soil of thought. It was crude, fragile, but alive, carrying weight beyond silence. Athena watched, her presence glowing brighter as humanity awakened. For wisdom had entered them, not as a storm, but as dawn. And dawn never comes all at once, but with slow, certain light. The people began to feel the world was not only survival, but mystery. They looked at stars with reverence, at rivers with patience, at stones with care. They touched the earth and sensed it was more than ground beneath their feet. Athena had given them the first true gift of civilization, thought. Thought that would grow into questions, questions into discovery, discovery into knowledge. It was the beginning of a path that would never end. The first step from silence into meaning, from instinct into reason. And though they did not know her name, Athena was with them. Guiding, unseen, patient, kind, she lit the lantern of the human spirit. And the lantern would never be extinguished, for thought had been born. The dawn returned again and again, But now humanity no longer looked with empty eyes. The seeds of thought had taken root, and the world appeared filled with new possibilities. Athena watched, silent and patient, as their hands began to move with purpose. A stone was no longer just a stone, but something waiting to be shaped. A branch was no longer only wood, but a tool waiting to be discovered. Their fingers lingered on objects, sensing the hidden meanings inside them. Athena whispered gently, guiding their curiosity toward creation. She showed them how to strike stone against stone, sparks leaping in surprise. They learned that fire could be born not only from nature, but from will. The flame became more than warmth. It was now a companion of the mind. Athena smiled, for she knew invention was the first language of civilization. She taught them to see not only what was, but what could be. The river was not only water, it was force, movement, endless power. The rock was not only obstacle, it was strength, foundation, and shape. The branch was not only cover, it was extension of the hand, a tool. And soon the first tools were made, simple yet extraordinary in their meaning. A sharpened stone could cut, carve, divide, and bring form to what was formless. A branch, shaped by thought, could reach further than the arm itself. For the first time, humanity's hands became more than survival servants. They became creators, guided by reason, touched by Athena's wisdom. Around fires, they began to share what they learned, one showing another. A spark of knowledge passed like flame from mind to mind. Athena knew this was the true birth of invention, the beginning of craft. The world changed quietly, without thunder, only with hands shaping purpose. Huts of branches appeared, shelters formed from more than chance gathering. Stone was stacked not by accident, but with intent, walls rising in silence. The earth began to carry the imprint of human thought. Athena walked unseen among them, her presence felt in each discovery. Her gift was not force, but the gentle light of possibility. She whispered, and they learned to grind stone into sharper edges. She guided, and they discovered clay shaped by hand could hold water. What once spilled freely into soil was now carried, stored, and saved. Each step was small, yet each step carried the weight of a future. Athena did not rush them, for wisdom grows slowly like the dawn. She knew each tool was more than object. It was memory of thought. It was the proof that humanity had begun to dream with their hands. The forests, once untamed, began to yield to human imagination. The rivers, once feared, became paths and mirrors for invention. The stones, once silent, spoke through the shapes they were carved into. Athena's heart was steady, her guidance constant, her vision vast. She saw beyond the huts and fires, beyond the sharpened stones. She saw the city waiting in the distance of time, rising from these beginnings. But for now, she remained close, a whisper at their side. The first hammer struck stone, and its echo carried through the valley. The first shaped tool was passed from hand to hand, eyes shining with wonder. They no longer only survived, they began to shape survival itself. And Athena, guardian of wisdom, stood unseen but smiling. For the dawn of tools was the dawn of human imagination. And imagination, once born, would never be silenced again. The earth itself seemed to awaken to their touch. Each tool was more than invention. It was the voice of Athena. The silent world had begun to speak in the language of creation. And humanity, still fragile but now empowered, stepped closer to civilization. The sun rose softly over the horizon, casting golden light across the valley of new beginnings. Humanity stirred, their minds restless with questions that reached beyond tools and fire. They looked at the stars, glittering above, and wondered what stories lived in the sky. Athena, patient and wise, knew the time had come to gift them with symbols. For symbols were more than marks. They were the bridge between thought and memory. She guided their hands to draw lines in the sand, circles on stone, patterns in clay. At first, they were simple. Marks for the sun, the moon, the passing of days. One line meant one, two lines meant two, and soon numbers were born. With numbers, they began to count the goats, the baskets, the passing seasons. The people felt something shift within them, for now they could hold time. No longer did memory vanish like smoke. It was fixed, waiting to be recalled. Athena whispered softly. Symbols would outlast the voice, endure beyond the moment. They learned to carve stories into walls, to etch journeys into stone. The first records were not perfect, but they carried the spark of continuity. A spiral marked the path of the sun, a dot the seed in the ground. Patterns grew, and with them, knowledge no longer belonged to a single person. It belonged to the group, to the village, to all who could read the marks. Athena watched with quiet pride as they began to weave language from symbols. The spoken word was fleeting, but now the hand could preserve the voice. Children traced marks in the dust, repeating what elders had taught them. The first teachers were born, not through command, but through the sharing of symbols. The village gathered at night to hear tales told with gestures and signs, stories of the stars, of the rivers, of the spirits hidden in the trees. Athena guided them to give names to constellations, so the night became a map. The hunter, the serpent, the bird, they saw themselves reflected in the sky. Each constellation carried lessons, warnings, and hope for the wandering traveler. The people felt the world expand, for now the heavens spoke to them. Symbols carved in stone became prayers, promises, and records of gratitude. Clay tablets preserved the harvest, the births, and the rhythm of life. With each mark, the people moved further from silence into expression. Athena knew they were shaping not just symbols, but the fabric of culture. Language grew roots, and from those roots, tradition began to blossom. The river no longer flowed only with water, but with names and stories. The fire no longer burned only with heat, but with words carried in smoke. Athena smiled, for she saw the seed of poetry stirring in their souls. They began to chant, to sing, to wrap meaning in rhythm and song. The first music rose with the dawn, carrying both memory and hope. Symbols on stone became symbols in sound, each note a bridge of meaning. The people felt united, for now they shared more than survival. They shared dreams, songs, and stories that bound them together. Athena's wisdom had given them more than marks. It had given them identity. Through symbols, they remembered who they were, where they came from, and why they endured. The night sky, once silent, now held their stories among the stars. The earth, once nameless, now carried their words in stone and clay. Athena watched, knowing the first libraries were born in caves and walls. They were small, yet infinite, for memory had found a way to endure. The children of dawn no longer lived only in the present. They carried the past with them, and they prepared for the future. Athena's gift of symbols was not only knowledge, but the power of connection. For connection was the heartbeat of civilization, the thread that held it together. And so, under the watch of Athena, humanity learned to write its story. Each mark, each line, each word was a step closer to the city of wisdom, and the dawn of civilization glowed brighter, lit by memory that could never fade. The fields stretched wide beneath the sky, and the people looked upon them with new eyes. Once they had wandered, moving with the herds and the seasons, never tied to one place. But Athena whispered of patience, of seeds hidden in the soil waiting for hands to guide them. She showed them how grain could be gathered, stored, and sown again in fertile ground. The first furrows were carved by hand, the earth parting as though it had been waiting. Seeds fell like tiny promises, silent yet full of hope for the days to come. The rains returned, and green shoots broke through the soil, stretching toward the sun. The people watched with wonder, for the land itself now answered their care. They learned to build fields, to guide water from rivers into thirsty soil. Ditches became lifelines, carrying the blessing of the river into dry ground. And when the harvest came, it was more than food. It was security. It was future. Athena smiled, for she saw the bond between humanity and the earth deepening. The village no longer feared the hunger of winter as they once had. Grain-filled baskets, clay jars, and storerooms shaped by careful hands. The cycle of planting and harvest became the rhythm of their lives. Children grew up watching their parents turn soil, plant seeds, and reap abundance. Songs rose in the fields, chants of gratitude to the earth and the skies. The harvest was no longer just survival. It became a celebration of community. The people gathered, shared, and feasted, dancing around fires beneath the stars. Athena guided them to see that food was more than nourishment. It was culture. Bread baked from grain became a symbol of togetherness, shared at every table. Fruits and vegetables added color, variety, and joy to the meals of the people. Slowly, gardens bloomed within villages, flowers mingling with herbs and healing plants. Athena whispered knowledge of roots, leaves, and berries that carried hidden powers. They learned which plants healed, which soothed, and which gave strength in times of weakness. The first healers emerged, hands guided by wisdom and care for their people. Thus, medicine was born, a gift of the earth, shaped by human understanding. The people saw that the earth was not only soil, but a partner in life. The land gave, and in return, they offered respect, ritual, and song. Fields became sacred, tended with reverence, as if Athena herself walked among them. The seasons became teachers, each bringing lessons of patience, change, and renewal. Spring taught hope, summer taught labor, autumn taught gratitude, winter taught endurance. The people's hearts grew steady, anchored to the cycles of the land. No longer did they drift endlessly. They built homes where the fields thrived. Villages grew, huts becoming houses, houses becoming clusters of families united. The hearth burned constantly, fed by harvests that came from their own soil. Athena knew civilization was taking root as deeply as the seeds they planted. For the land tied them together, shaping not only their bodies, but their hearts. Neighbors shared water, exchanged grain, and guarded fields as one community. Conflict faded beneath the weight of shared harvests and shared hopes. The earth was not endless, but it was generous when treated with care. The people learned balance, to take, but also to preserve for tomorrow. Athena whispered this balance into their dreams, urging respect for nature's limits. They carved storage pits, built granaries, and learned to save for harder days. For the first time, the future was no longer uncertain, but shaped by foresight. Children grew strong, their laughter echoing across fields of golden grain. The land, once wild, had become a partner in the story of humanity. And Athena, unseen yet ever near, watched with pride at this new dawn. For in the rhythm of sowing and reaping, humanity had found stability. In the promise of the seed, they had discovered the promise of tomorrow. And in the quiet strength of the fields, the roots of civilization grew deep. The villages grew larger, and the air carried the sound of many voices woven together. Families gathered not only to survive, but to share, to plan, to dream as one. Athena watched as humanity discovered the power of gathering in circles of trust. They built meeting places, shaded by trees or marked by stones in the earth. Here, words flowed freely, and decisions took shape through listening and speaking. No longer was life guided only by instinct. Now it was guided by reason. Elders spoke with patience, their memories guiding the young toward wiser choices. The youth listened, then added their own visions, mixing past with the future. Athena whispered gently that unity was strength, and strength required understanding. The people learned that when voices joined, the burden of choice grew lighter. Disputes were settled not with force, but with words shaped by wisdom. The circle became sacred, a place where fairness was born. One person brought grain, another water, another offered tools for the fields. From these acts of sharing, the first sense of community blossomed. Athena smiled, for she knew cooperation was the heartbeat of civilization. They began to choose guides, leaders not of power, but of responsibility. The leader was the one who listened most, not the one who shouted loudest. Their role was to carry the voice of the people, not to rule over them. The community thrived under this balance, learning the art of shared responsibility. Children grew watching the circle of voices, learning fairness as a way of life. They saw that leadership was not ownership, but service to the group. Athena knew the seed of democracy had been planted deep in human hearts. The village council became a place of trust, where truth was sought together. The people began to shape laws, simple but firm, born of shared wisdom. Respect the land, honor the harvest, protect the young, care for the old. These early laws were not written, but they lived in every choice and action. Songs were sung of justice. Poems carried the memory of fairness. The idea spread from one village to another, uniting strangers through trust. Athena whispered into their dreams that fairness was the foundation of greatness. And so, the first laws took root, unseen yet powerful, guiding their lives. When disputes arose, the council listened, weighed, and spoke with calm clarity. The people accepted the judgment, for they had been part of the circle. The strength of many became greater than the will of one alone. Athena saw their hearts grow steady, bound by trust and respect. Festivals became times not only of joy, but of reaffirming their unity. The circle of decision became the circle of song, of dance, of story. They remembered together, celebrated together, and decided together. Athena's wisdom had shaped their hands and tools, but now it shaped their hearts. The people understood that the bond between them was their true shield. They built not walls of stone, but walls of trust strong enough to endure storms. The village flourished, not because of one voice, but because of all voices. The people saw that each person mattered, each voice was a note in the song. Athena walked among them unseen, proud of the harmony she had nurtured. For civilization was more than tools and harvests. It was the art of living together. And in their councils, in their songs, in their shared laughter, she saw the dawn. Thus art, dawn of governance, not by fear, but by wisdom, fairness, and unity. This was the seed of cities, the seed of nations, the seed of future greatness. And so humanity took another step, guided always by the silent hand of Athena. a step closer to the light, a step further from the shadows of isolation. And the voice of civilization grew stronger, rising like a chorus in the dawn. The rivers shimmered under the light of dawn, carrying with them the promise of fertile lands. Villages that once lived apart now began to move closer, drawn by the flow of water and trade. Athena saw how rivers were more than paths of water. They were bridges between human lives. Boats made of hollowed trees carried not just goods, but stories, songs, and wisdom from far places. One village shared grain for clay pots, another traded wool for salt, and all prospered together. The art of exchange was born, and with it, the first whispers of markets filled the air. On riverbanks, people gathered in circles, not for laws this time, but for trade and friendship. Athena guided their hands to weigh fairly, to measure truly, so trust could flow like the river. Fair trade became a language of peace, one that needed no weapons, only honesty. Children watched as coins of clay or carved tokens passed between hands like seeds of trust. The market grew into a place of color and sound, where every voice had something to offer. It was no longer about survival alone, but about weaving lives together through exchange. A potter could feed his family with the harvest of another without lifting a plow. A shepherd's flock could give wool in return for tools he never knew how to make. The circle of life expanded, and humanity discovered the beauty of interdependence. Athena whispered gently that trade was not about possession, but about connection. The people began to see value not only in goods, but in the effort behind them. They praised the skill of the craftsman, the patience of the farmer, the care of the shepherd. Respect grew alongside wealth, and the bonds of society deepened. The rivers carried not only goods, but also ideas that shaped the future. Songs from distant villages became known, and with them new stories, new dreams. The art of weaving traveled downstream, the secret of brewing traveled upstream. Athena smiled, for she knew knowledge was the greatest gift ever traded. With every journey, horizons widened, and imagination stretched beyond the village walls. The river became a teacher, flowing endlessly, uniting strangers with gentle persistence. The market became a place where strangers learned to trust, guided by fairness. No temple was as sacred as the marketplace, where people honored one another in trade. Here, honesty was the highest offering, and deception was quickly cast aside. The people learned that trust, once broken, was harder to mend than any pot. So they guarded it carefully, as they would guard a fire in the night. Athena's wisdom was alive in their choices, in the way they weighed, measured, and shared. She saw in their markets the first sparks of economies, fragile but full of light. It was not wealth itself that mattered, but the bonds strengthened through exchange. The marketplace became a heartbeat, steady and strong, pumping life into villages. Festivals were held where trade met music, laughter, and the joy of discovery. Strangers became neighbors, and neighbors became friends, bound by goods and goodwill. Athena walked unseen among them, blessing each act of fair exchange. The world was no longer scattered voices, but a chorus woven together by trade. Humanity had taken another step toward civilization, guided by trust and fairness. The river flowed on, carrying their dreams further than they could imagine. Athena knew that as long as fairness lived in their hands, peace would follow their paths. And so the markets grew, and with them, the promise of a greater tomorrow. The dawn of commerce had arrived, not with greed, but with unity. And Athena, the silent guardian, watched the seeds of prosperity take root. For civilization was not only about survival, but about learning to live and thrive together. and the rivers carried this truth forward, whispering it into the future. The fields stretched wider now, golden under the sun, as people learned the rhythm of planting and harvest. Athena watched as they studied the stars, marking the seasons, guiding their hands with patience. The sky became their clock, the earth their calendar, and wisdom their greatest harvest. Farmers learned that soil was alive, and with care it returned life 100-fold. They rotated crops, rested fields, and shared seeds, creating abundance where once there was scarcity. Children ran through fields of grain, their laughter echoing like songs of the future. Athena whispered that patience and balance were the truest allies of the farmer. They began to build granaries, storing grain not only for survival, but for tomorrow. With stored food came security, and with security came freedom to dream beyond hunger. The nights no longer held the same fear, for the people had learned to prepare. They gathered around fires, telling stories of planting and harvest, of the dance with the earth. Songs rose with the wind, carrying thanks to the land that nourished them. Athena knew that gratitude was the invisible thread binding humanity to the earth. The villages grew stronger, not only with food, but with a sense of continuity. Every season was a chapter, and every harvest a promise renewed. The elders taught that the earth gave freely only when treated with care. The youth listened and carried the lesson into their hands and hearts. Tools grew sharper, plows stronger, as minds and hands worked together with purpose. The earth answered with abundance, and the people answered with respect. Festivals of harvest became sacred, where joy mingled with gratitude. They danced, not just for food, but for the bond between life and labor. Athena saw their hearts grow steady, rooted like the crops they nurtured. Trade expanded, for surplus grain became a gift to distant villages. Markets thrived with the golden wealth of the fields, exchanged for new crafts and skills. Bread was broken not only at homes, but between strangers who became friends. The simple act of sharing food wove bonds deeper than any spoken word. Athena smiled, knowing that nourishment was more than physical. It was spiritual. The people understood that food carried memory, culture, and identity. A grain of wheat was not only sustenance, but history preserved in seed. From field to table, each step was a story of care, labor, and gratitude. The hearth became the center of family, the table a sacred circle of unity. Meals were shared with laughter, advice, and plans for the seasons ahead. Children learned that every bite carried the effort of many hands. Athena's presence lingered in the taste of bread, in the warmth of shared meals. The land became not only a resource, but a trusted partner in life. The fields no longer spoke only of survival, but of community and continuity. The dawn of agriculture had matured into the rhythm of civilization. Athena saw that humanity was no longer chasing tomorrow, but shaping it. The earth, once feared and unknown, had become a companion in their journey. The people learned to live in harmony with cycles greater than themselves. And in their harmony with the land, Athena saw wisdom take root. The dawn was no longer fragile, it was steady, rising with every harvest. Humanity had stepped into a new age, guided by patience and care. And Athena, the silent guardian, walked with them still, smiling at their journey. For in their fields, their granaries, their shared meals, she saw civilization flourish. And the seeds they planted carried not only life, but the promise of tomorrow. Stone began to rise from the earth, shaped by hands that sought permanence and meaning. The people who once lived in huts of clay now dreamed of homes that could last generations. Athena watched as they lifted stones together, one by one, building walls that told stories of unity. The first temples appeared, not for fear of gods, but for gratitude to the forces of life. People gathered in these sacred spaces to honor the sun, the rain, the harvest, and one another. Carvings on stone walls told stories of the past, of heroes, of lessons never to be forgotten. The people began to shape memory not only in songs, but in symbols etched in stone. Athena guided their hands, whispering that memory was the root of wisdom, and wisdom the root of strength. The stones became libraries before words were written, preserving truth through patterns and art. Families built homes of wood and stone, strong against storms, warm against the cold of night. The hearth still glowed at the center, but now the house itself became a circle of belonging. Children grew within walls that promised safety, and their laughter filled the new villages. Athena smiled, for civilization was learning to root itself not only in fields, but in foundations. The people saw that shelter was more than survival. It was dignity, pride, and continuity. Together they built meeting halls where councils could gather, larger circles beneath sturdy roofs. In these halls, voices echoed, and decisions carried weight beyond one season. The villages transformed into towns, their streets forming paths of connection and discovery. Markets spread along these paths, filled with sound, color, and the hum of life. The rhythm of the town was steady. Work in the day, gathering in the evening, dreaming at night. Athena saw their confidence grow as stone rose higher, stronger and more purposeful. Monuments appeared not to boast, but to remember. The harvests, the floods, the lessons learned. These stones whispered to future generations, promising that their past would not be forgotten. Temples stood at the heart of towns, glowing with offerings of gratitude and hope. Priests and wise women tended them, keeping rituals of memory alive for all to share. Athena knew that such rituals bound hearts together, giving shape to belief and belonging. Art blossomed, painted on walls, carved into wood, sung in the echoes of temples. Symbols became the first language of memory, paving the way for words yet to come. The towns grew vibrant, alive with diversity of craft, skill, and thought. A potter's hand told one story, a mason's chisel another, each voice woven into the town. Athena whispered that every act of creation was sacred, for it shaped more than stone, it shaped identity. Children looked upon temples and homes with wonder, knowing they belonged to something enduring. The towns were no longer fragile gatherings, but communities rooted in shared memory. Festivals filled their squares with joy, where drums, flutes, and laughter echoed through stone streets. The people began to measure time not only by harvests, but by celebrations. Every year was marked not only by labor, but by joy shared together. Athena walked among them unseen, proud of the harmony etched into stone and song. She saw that permanence gave humanity the courage to look beyond the present. No longer did they only prepare for tomorrow. They dreamed of centuries to come. The walls they built were not cages, but canvases for their imagination. And in these towns, with their temples, halls, and markets, civilization shone brighter. The dawn of architecture had arrived, carrying with it the weight of memory and the light of vision. Athena knew the journey was far from over, but the foundations had been laid strong. For in stone, in story, in song, humanity was building its future, and the gods themselves marveled at the beauty of what mortal hands could create. Athena, the guardian of wisdom, smiled gently, for the dawn had grown into day. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold, as humanity stood on the edge of a new horizon. Athena looked upon the world, now alive with voices, with laughter, with dreams that stretched beyond the stars. She had walked beside them since the first spark of thought, whispering wisdom into their fragile beginnings. From fire to farming, from stone to song, every step had carried them closer to the light. She saw their temples rise, their towns flourish, their markets hum with the rhythm of fairness. She heard their councils speak, their festivals sing, their children laugh within walls built of hope. Every field they sowed, every story they carved, every circle they formed was a seed of tomorrow. Athena knew civilization was not a single dawn, but many, each one born of courage and care. The people had learned that survival was only the beginning. True life was found in unity. They had discovered that fairness was stronger than fear, that trust lasted longer than stone. Athena smiled, for she knew the wisdom she had sown now lived in human hearts. The rivers still flowed, carrying songs and stories, weaving villages into nations. The stars still shone, guiding farmers, travelers, and dreamers to their unknown futures. The earth still answered, giving life to those who honored it with patience and respect. And humanity, guided by wisdom, had stepped into a new rhythm, steady and strong. Athena knew she was no longer needed in every moment, for her voice now lived within them. It echoed in the fairness of their trade, in the justice of their counsels, in the laughter of their children. It was carried in their songs, in their festivals, in the quiet strength of their shared meals. Athena, goddess of wisdom, had given them tools not of war, but of life. And with those tools, they had shaped a world of promise, fragile yet full of light. She watched as the children of tomorrow learned to write, their words carving memory into clay. Symbols became language, language became history, and history became the bridge between generations. Athena smiled, for she saw the dawn of knowledge rise brighter than any sun. Humanity would stumble, as all children do, but wisdom would lift them, guide them, steady them. The journey ahead was long, filled with challenges unseen, but also with dreams yet unimagined. Athena knew the story of civilization was not finished, only beginning. Every dawn would bring new choices, and every choice would shape the world anew. But she trusted them, these children of Earth, these dreamers of tomorrow. They had proven that even fragile hands could build temples, even humble voices could shape laws. And so, Athena stepped back into the quiet of eternity, her heart filled with pride. She knew they would call her name in prayers, in stories, in whispered gratitude. But her greatest gift was not her presence. It was the wisdom that lived on, without her. The wisdom that reminded them to seek fairness, to honor the earth, to cherish one another. The wisdom that told them civilization was not walls or wealth, but the way they chose to live. Athena's story became their story, woven into every song, every stone, every dawn. The sun dipped lower, but its light lingered, a promise that tomorrow would always come. And as night fell, the stars rose, guiding humanity toward dreams still waiting in the dark. Athena's voice whispered once more, soft as the wind, strong as the earth. Remember, she said, civilization is not what you build, but how you choose to live together. And with those words, she faded into the eternal sky, leaving humanity to walk its path. The dawn of civilization had been lit, and its light would never fade. For in every heart, in every voice, in every dream, Athena would live on forever.